Muhanned Qafesha is a Palestinian journalist and activist who's based in Hebron, and he joins us now via Zoom for an update on these developments in Israel. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for hosting me. It's a pleasure talking to you.
I can imagine on a day like today, burying Shireen, that the journalist community in particular in Palestine must still be quite stunned by what some of them witnessed and what they've been experiencing over time.
We're still shocked. I still wake up every day and I can't believe that the person I saw on TV, the person that was my idol, and I studied journalism because I was watching her when I was a little kid growing up, when she was covering the second Intifada in Palestine, is gone. I can't still believe myself. I wake up every day and I still think it's a dream. I still believe it's a dream that we lost such an icon, a Palestinian legend who helped and worked on the Palestinian case on Al Jazeera channel for over 24 years, since 1997. We are still in a big shock as Palestinian journalists, because she was a friend of ours, not only a journalist. She was a friend of all Palestinian journalists, and she was, as I said, someone who we all saw as an idol. And the majority of the young generation of Palestinians who studied journalism, they studied journalism because they wanted to be like Shireen Abu Akleh and Jafar al-Budairi, who was her colleague at Al Jazeera now. So we're still in a big shock. We still can't believe we lost such a great human and such a great Palestinian journalist in Palestine.
And it must be sad again that on top of losing her life, that even her funeral was disturbed in the way that it was by the Israeli forces.
Yeah, it was also another case where they attacked the funeral before it starts today. It was just going out of the French hospital in Jerusalem, where the Israeli police, border police, approached the hospital and attacked the funeral before it starts. They attacked the body. They didn't care that all the media is covering the funeral, is covering the exit of the body from the hospital in Jerusalem. They still didn't care about the international cameras that were based there. Al Jazeera camera itself, her colleagues were covering, and they still attacked the body, the Israeli army. And that is not something new in Palestine. People who follow the case of Palestine and watch videos and watch lives from Palestine, they see that this is a typical thing that the Israeli army do. They try to terrorize and scare the Palestinian people. They try to make people not participate in her funeral. She was attacked when she was alive many times by the Israeli army, and she was investigated by the Israeli police in Jerusalem several times when she was working as a journalist, accused of being accused of many things, such as hate speeches. But she was never giving a hate speech. She was just covering the news of Palestine. And when she passed away, when she was murdered and killed, her body was attacked. So when she was alive and when she was already dead, she was still targeted by the Israeli army. And they attacked the funeral because they didn't want a lot of people to participate in the funeral. They were attacking everyone in Jerusalem. Although the attacks of the Israeli army were very huge and the brutality of the Israeli army was very big, although we had all of this happening today, we had Shireen's funeral, one of the biggest funerals and the largest funerals around Palestine. I have never seen such a funeral that goes for several days, from Jenin to Ramallah, then from Ramallah to Jerusalem, and you have a huge funeral for her. Wherever you walk around Palestine today, you hear everyone talking about Shireen. And as I said, every time I read the news, every time I see a video, every time I'm talking to someone, it still hurts every one of us, Palestinian journalists and Palestinians and all of people who support Palestine and her friends. It still hurts us a lot that that we lost her, and it's a big, and it's a deep sadness inside of every one of us. We didn't only lose Shireen, we lost someone who worked so much and so hard for Palestine. And I can't really find the words to describe the sadness inside of every Palestinian, but I would tell you that the killing of Shireen now in Palestine is the top case that everyone is talking about. Everyone wants to go in the street and participate in protests and participate in the funeral. A lot of Palestinians from the West Bank cannot reach Jerusalem to participate in the funeral of Shireen because of the separation wall. We're talking about millions of Palestinians that can go to the funeral in Jerusalem, but still, we had a big funeral for her in Jenin and Ramallah. And an update, I don't know if you've heard about it or not, about an hour ago, the Israeli army went to the funeral hall where the family of Shireen receiving people to say sorry for their loss. The Israeli army went there and closed and shut down the funeral, and they refused to let people stay in that place where her family are receiving friends and Palestinians were coming to say sorry to the family of Shireen for their loss.
I also heard that the Israelis police came to where the body was and removed the Palestinian flag from display. Did they give any reasons why they've taken the actions that they have? A, to clash with mourners, and B, to take away something that's quite sacred at a really solemn moment, like taking away a flag?
Usually when the Israelis do anything, I'm talking about the Israeli army and the Israeli forces, occupation forces, whenever they do something such as attacking a Palestinian, such as putting a Palestinian in jail, such as killing a Palestinian, they never give a justification for that. They never give a reason why don't we want a Palestinian flag in the streets of Jerusalem. And it's very clear why they don't want a Palestinian flag in Jerusalem. It's because they don't want to see a Palestinian flag in any Palestinian city, not only in Jerusalem. And imagine that it's a Palestinian flag in Jerusalem, that Israel and Israelis and Zionists consider this city as the capital of Israel. It provokes them. It makes them angry to see a Palestinian flag. It makes them angry to see a Palestinian is successful, for example. It makes them angry. It upsets them to see anything is related to Palestine. That's why they take down the Palestinian flags, and they react very violently to such a thing. It's just a flag, but they still attack it. It's not different from what happened before in South Africa, where people were attacked and people were, enslaved in South Africa. In Palestine now, you're talking about a situation that is not much different from South Africa when it was in the 80s and 70s. So this is the occupation. The occupation will not give you your freedom. The occupation will not let you raise your flag freely. They will absolutely attack you. And if they don't, I would feel absolutely that this is something weird, because that's what the occupation do. And with the body of Shireen and the funeral of Shireen, they did not expect that the story of Shireen would be this big on the media and everywhere. That's why it is provoking them. Israel now is feeling so embarrassed when it comes to the story of Shireen and how she was killed by the Israeli army. At the beginning, the Israelis said she was killed by a Palestinian fire. Then when the Beit Salem, which is an Israeli human rights organization, on Twitter published a video shows that the Palestinians were shooting at the Israeli army were completely far away from where Shireen was standing, which they were in the middle of the camp. And she was like a few kilometers away from Shireen, and there were houses covering. So it's impossible to have a bullet coming to Shireen from the Palestinian shooter. But on the other hand, they showed that the Israeli army were on the same line, 150 meters away, from 100 to 150 meters away from Shireen and her friend Shada and her producer Ali Samoudi, and they still published this and showed that the Israeli narrative is is such a joke. I'm sorry to say this word, but it was such a joke. So it showed that she was targeted by the Israeli army. Then the Israeli narrative changed. They started saying she might be being shot by an Israeli fire, but by mistake. Then they started saying, okay, we started investigating the Palestinian, the Israeli soldiers, which is it's a special unit called the Yamam that usually does this kind of operations. And they said, what we started, investigating Israeli soldiers, and they have investigated already one of the soldiers, but no investigation come out. I'm going to tell you this before you ask me about it. Maybe you will not ask me about it. As Palestinians, because the Israelis asked for a mutual or one to form one group that is Palestinian and Israeli and international to investigate, or Palestinian and Israeli to investigate the killing of Shireen. As Palestinians, we don't trust the Israelis. She was shot and killed by an Israeli soldier. So that's why the Palestinians are refusing to make the Israelis participate in any kind of investigation in what happened, because what B'Tselem published and what the people who were in there, the witnesses and the testimonies of the witnesses, the Palestinians who were there, that say the Israeli army were on the top of that roof. Other videos were released later that show one of the Israeli soldiers is shooting towards Shireen's where she was standing. And when the incident happened, if you go back to the video, it shows how the Israeli army kept targeting Shireen and her colleague Shada, and the Palestinians who were trying to help, they kept shooting. It was not only one bullet, it was more. And it reminds us as Palestinians of 2000 incident, not incident, 2000, the killing in 2000 in Gaza of Muhanned Qafesha, the Palestinian kid who was killed in 2000 during the Second Intifada. And after 22 years, the same images and the same videos come out from Palestine that remind us of what happened with Muhanned Qafesha. It's the same, 22 years. And Shireen was in Gaza that time covering the killing of Muhanned Qafesha and the injury of his dad. And it's such a really difficult thing for Palestinians to forget about Muhanned Qafesha. Now it's two things the Palestinians will remember.
Muhanned, she was a high-profile journalist, an American citizen as well. And if the Israeli forces could do that to her, what is happening every day to lesser-known Palestinian journalists?
So many things. Because this was really viral, because Shireen was well known in Palestine, and she is reporting for a very well known channel, Al Jazeera. The case went viral because people loved Shireen when they grew up watching Shireen. So the reaction of what happened was really big by the people themselves. So that's why the case went very viral. But before, we had a Palestinian journalist called Muhanned Qafesha, 2 years ago, was targeted, shot in the eye by an Israeli soldier, and he lost his eye. He lost his eye. Palestinian journalists. I was shot personally while covering the clashes in Hebron, the brutality of the Israeli army toward Palestinians. I was shot and targeted by a soldier, and I was completely far from the clashes. My other friend who takes pictures, and the photographer of Reuters in Hebron, was attacked and was shot in the knee by a sniper. A Palestinian friend of mine, who is a journalist too, was shot from 3 meters distance by an Israeli Magaf soldier, who is a border police, or a normal soldier in the Israeli army. He was shot from 3 meters distance, and that was filmed. People didn't see it. It didn't go viral. Although we shared it everywhere, but it didn't go viral. From 3 meters, a rubber bullet in the hand, it broke his hand. He almost died if it hit his head. So every day, whenever we go cover clashes, whenever we go to work, whenever we do anything, we find the Israeli army, the first thing they do is to attack us. They started attacking us because they know that when we film their brutality, when we film their violence, it's going to the rest of the world. And they don't want to be shown with their brutality to the rest of the world, because recently a lot of people are getting to know about Palestine because of the videos that we are filming as Palestinian journalists and as Palestinian individuals. So Israeli soldiers are just trying to prevent the truth from going out from Palestine to the rest of the world. That's why they attack Palestinian journalists. We get attacked every time we go to cover any kind of clashes. Today, the Palestinian journalists from different media institutions went to cover the eviction of the Palestinian Bedouins and villagers in the South Hebron Hills. The 4,000 Palestinians are going to be, their homes will be demolished. The Israeli settlers, armed settlers, attacked them in front of the army and attacked their cars, and windows were broken in front of the soldiers, and the army did not do anything. So we get attacked by the army themselves and by the settlers, and we feel that we are being targeted, honestly, targeted. And Shireen is not the first case, and I don't think Shireen will be the last case as long as Israel is not accountable for its crimes. And again, we don't believe as Palestinians that the soldier who shot Shireen will be accountable because other soldiers, Israeli soldiers who shoot at Palestinians, Palestinian journalists, and it was documented, were not taken to investigation. We need the international support with Shireen's case. We need the international community to hold Israel accountable for their crimes. I don't think Israel will wake up tomorrow morning and say we are going to put this soldier in jail. And even if they do, it won't be as anyone around the world would expect it. If it is an Israeli investigation, they will try to completely cover it, and maybe he will take 8 months in jail, as Alior Azaria, who's one of the Israeli soldiers who executed a Palestinian, and it was filmed. He was 8 months in jail, and it was made less time. We don't trust the Israelis, and even if they try to make any kind of little accountability, it's because they want to protect the soldier, and they want to make the international community believe that Israel is making their soldiers accountable. They are not. 8 months in jail for targeting and killing a journalist is not enough. And I don't believe that Israel will really do anything to they will do their best to protect their soldier and not put him in jail. But we need to make the international community stand with us and support us to make Israel and Israeli crimes and the Israelis who commit crimes against Palestinians accountable.
Muhanned, we have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for sharing your insights and your thoughts at this very difficult time. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's Muhanned Qafesha, who's a Palestinian journalist and activist based in Hebron, who is talking to us about some of the challenges that journalists are facing in Palestine at being attacked by Israeli forces. And to give you a sense of how long this has been going on for, we believe that 86 Palestinian journalists have been killed since 1967. And 50 of those just since 2000. And no Israeli person has been brought to account, or authorities brought to account, for any of those killings. 86 journalists.